Hi there, it's Fred and Fred. Thanks for tuning in to Guitar Media, and welcome to Guitar Media's Marshall Artist Cascade mod video. We're here today to take a look at this 1971 Marshall Artist in the 50-watt headbox version. Okay, safety first. If you're going to be working on this amp, you want to make sure it's off and unplug the cord. You can always discharge the capacitors, or what I like to do is just check the positions where I'm working with a multimeter to make sure there's no voltage. Okay, so this amp stock basically without any modifications. If we just take a look at the circuit, we see 0.047 value capacitors throughout the circuit, and these are the coupling capacitors. Now this is typically what we would find in a Blackface Pro Reverb. And so this is a much larger value than Marshall typically has 0.022 capacitors. And this leaves this amp with much more of a bassy type tone. Also, Marshall in this particular amplifier used the 0.68 tone capacitor for the bass control. And the 0.68 is much larger than most any other bass controls, being a 0.1. So the larger of the value of the capacitor means more bass. And so this amplifier without a modification was technically more of a bass amp here on the first channel, and a lot of people will argue and say that this is more like a regular Marshall here without the reverb. And while I did get it to sustain with humbuckers, it was absolutely not even anywhere near a solo setting with like a Fender Stratocaster or Telecaster. And then for the reverb channel, I would say it's actually somewhat comparable to the Pro Reverb, but the reverb on this particular amplifier is noisy and just not quite as musical. And it really makes sense if you think about it. If you understand the Fender Pro Reverb has a reverb driver tube, a reverb driver transformer, as well as a reverb recovery tube. Whereas this amplifier only has a single reverb driver tube, and it leaves the reverb really wanting. Okay, for the non-modded recordings, we plug straight into the reverb channel on the high sensitivity input. We're on the volume on 10, treble on 10, bass on 10, reverb quite high as it does help to drive the signal, and we run the presence on 10. Now for the modded and Cascade mod recordings, we plug straight into the high sensitivity input on the normal channel, and we run the volume on 10. We leave the treble down really low and the bass down really low, and sometimes we'll dial them up a little bit into the point of microphonics with the guitar, and then dial them back, dial them up a little bit, then dial them back, just to avoid microphonic issues. We also run a jumper cable in the reverb channel, and what this does is effectively lifts the signal from ground, increasing the gain even more. We run the volume on 10, and once again we run the treble and bass very low and crack them, turn them up a little bit into the point of microphonics, and then sort of back off on them both a little bit. And then for the reverb, sometimes we use the reverb. Most of the time we don't want to use the reverb because it just doesn't sound as good with high gain, and it's also noisy, and it's already noisy with the high gain, so to reduce the noise we don't use it. But when we do use it, we find that it responds very similarly with and without the mod. So we're running it usually all the way up to like 7. And then the presence control, we actually like to run it about 6 with the Cascade mod. So as quickly as possible, my understanding of the circuit of this amplifier. The guitar comes in here at the high sensitivity input on the normal channel, straight into gain stage 1. It leaves gain stage 1 and enters into this plate voltage supply area here. I think I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So now it leaves this plate voltage supply area here, travels through this capacitor. Now this capacitor blocks the maybe 130 volts here, and now there's only 200 or 300 millivolts here. So what it does, leaving this capacitor with 230 millivolts, the signal travels through these series of capacitors. And this is actually the tone capacitor for the treble pot. And this is the tone capacitor for the bass control, and this is the other side of the bass control here. So the signal is essentially leaving gain stage 1, turning into DC line level current, and then traveling into your tone stack. so now that the signal's at the tone stack, it's leaving the tone stack here and going directly into gain stage 2. It then leaves gain stage 2 and comes into, it actually travels into the plate voltage supply area here, and then it travels through this capacitor, which is a coupling capacitor, which blocks the 130, maybe 150 volts here, and turns it once again down into 200 or 300 millivolts here. And this is when it travels into the volume control. And what it does from there is it leaves the volume control. Let's see. Okay, so actually leaves the volume control here and actually travels through this blue wire into this area here. And you can see this, I believe this is a 470, I believe this is a 470K resistor into this 0.1 capacitor, effectively traveling into finally the phase inverter section over here. And so this leaves a total of 3 gain stages for the normal channel on this amplifier without a modification. Okay, we'll start zoomed out so you can see where we're working in the amplifier. So the first thing I did is actually remove this brown wire. So this brown wire here was actually connected here on the center tap of the normal volume. So what we did is we disconnected it from the center tap and we connected it here. And actually, this is actually where it's connected. So this is the other end of the wire here. So we just did this to stop the normal channel from going into the phase inverter. And so if we ever want to put it back to original, all we have to do is just disconnect this brown wire and reconnect it to the center terminal on the normal volume, and of course disconnect this resistor that we have connected here with the green wire. But that's what we did. If you look at the circuit, this brown wire, it actually goes to, all right, it's a blue wire, but it actually goes to here, and there's the 470K resistor. So what we did is, because there's a 470K resistor on the other end of that wire, that's why we connected another 470K here, because we had disconnected the other one. So now we're basically doing the same exact thing and then running this green wire to this resistor. And this resistor was connected here at this terminal, and we disconnected it and raised it and connected that green wire. And that's it for the modification of the Cascade mod. But we did change a couple of the capacitor values, and we'll get to that in a minute. unfortunately, what happened here is in this amplifier, they call for, well, they actually had a 0.68 in this position, and this is the capacitor that goes to the bass control. And so what had happened is when we would run the bass up, we had accidentally created a tremolo circuit. And so we removed the 0.68 capacitor from this position, and we replaced it with a 0.01 capacitor to drastically reduce the bass and eliminate the tremolo effect issue that we were having. We also changed this capacitor from a 0.047, and this is the coupling capacitor for gain stage 2, and we changed it to a 0.0022, and once again, this drastically reduced the output and sort of dialed the amp down before it goes into the reverb channel. And by dialing this down, this also helped to address the tremolo issue and eliminated the tremolo issue that we were having with the amplifier. Okay, I just wanted to talk about this orange drop here. This actually, someone had replaced this, was originally a 5K Lemco like you see here, and it's a 0.0047, so it's essentially not much different than what it was originally, and I don't know why they replaced it, but I just thought I would mention it just to solve anyone's curiosity. So finally, our conclusion on this amplifier, and it's really so difficult to put it in a nutshell, but my best way to say it is if you could imagine a JCM 800 with 0.1 output coupling caps, which is the base value with EL34s, And so when compared to a model 1986 or the bass circuit, it's just not going to have quite the growl that the bass circuit has, and not quite as crunchy, a little smoother, and a little bit more mid-range. And when compared to the lead circuit, it's just not quite as crunchy. Once again, just a little bit smoother and not really more mid-range. I would say a comparable mid-range to the lead circuit. If you'd like to support the channel or see some of our videos ranking higher in the Google and YouTube search engines, please like, comment, and subscribe, as this is absolutely free and the best way to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and check our channel for our latest videos.